Some places don't exist to be chosen. They exist to catch you when your day slips just slightly off track. That bar was one of them. It sat on the corner like it had stopped trying years ago. Dim amber lights softened everything. Faces, mistakes, intentions. Jazz drifted through the air like it was too tired to be noticed. Even the glasses behind the bar looked like they'd heard too many conversations they wished they hadn't. I walked in without thinking much about it. That's usually how bad nights begin. The bartender gave me a quick look, the kind that silently files you into a category. Not judgmental, just efficient. I sat down. Beer. A nod. Nothing else. The drink arrived fast. I took a sip. Regret. Predictable. For a while, nothing happened. Just the low hum of a place that exists between people's better decisions. And then something shifted. Not loudly. Not obviously. Just enough that the room adjusted around it. She walked in. Jenny. She didn't steal attention. She redirected it. There was no hesitation in her steps. No wasted movement. Even the brief pause at the entrance felt intentional. Like she was scanning the room, not entering it. Measuring, not reacting. Her eyes moved quickly. Not curious. Assessing. Most people were dismissed within seconds. Some without even realizing it. She moved to the bar and sat down a few seats away. The bartender didn't ask her order, just started preparing something more complicated than anything I was drinking. That alone said enough. She wasn't new. She wasn't random. She belonged to this place in a way most people didn't. I didn't turn to stare, just enough attention to notice patterns. She wasn't looking for noise or charm. She was looking for value. Time it paid back. Attention that returned something. People, to her, weren't connections. They were calculations. A gold digger, maybe, but not the obvious kind. Not sloppy. Not desperate. Precise. That made her interesting. A minute passed. Maybe two. Then, without build-up, "You're doing it wrong." I turned slightly, slow enough to make it clear I wasn't waiting for her. "That sounds serious." "It is," she said, calm. "If you're going to pretend not to look, at least commit to it." I let that sit for a second, then glanced at her properly. I wasn't pretending. I just lost interest halfway through. A pause. Small, but real. Her head tilted just slightly. Then, a smile. Not warm. Not friendly. Engaged. "That's new," she said. "Disappointment usually is." She studied me more carefully now. Not scanning, focusing. That was the first shift. "Most people try harder," she added. "Most people want something. And you don't." I took another sip before answering. "Not immediately. That tends to improve results." Another pause. This one longer. She adjusted her posture, turning a little more toward me. Subtle, but intentional. "So what are you waiting for?" she asked. "To see if this is worth the effort." That landed. Not hard, but deep enough. She leaned slightly closer, resting her arm on the bar. "And? Is it?" I looked at her for a moment. Not quickly, not nervously. Just enough to make the silence stretch. Undecided. That did it. The smile came back, but different now. Less controlled. More interested. Drinks came. Time passed. The bar blurred into the background as the space between us became more defined. The conversation didn't flow. It shifted, like two people testing boundaries without announcing it. "Let me guess," she said at one point. "You're not impressed easily." "I am," I replied. "Just not on schedule." She let out a quiet laugh. "Not for effect." That was new. "You're difficult. You're still here." I like puzzles. Careful. Some don't have satisfying endings. She watched me for a second longer than necessary. That second mattered, because something changed in it. Before, she had been evaluating. Now, she was considering. "You don't fit," she said quietly. "Into what?" "Anything obvious." "That sounds like a problem." "It is," she admitted. "For me, there was. Not control. Not performance. Just a crack, small but real. The kind that doesn't look like much at first, but grows." She didn't look around the bar anymore. Didn't scan for better options. Didn't check if something more valuable had walked in. Her attention stayed. Fully. "So what are you then?" she asked. I shrugged slightly. "A bad investment." A faint smile. "Why?" Unpredictable return. She shook her head, but there was amusement in it now. Less calculation. More reaction. That usually scares people away. "Does it?" She held my gaze. Didn't look away. No, she said. Not always. Silence settled again, but lighter this time. More comfortable. Less strategic. She leaned a little closer. Not enough to be obvious. Enough to matter. You're different, she said. I exhaled quietly. That's a dangerous word. Why? Because it makes people curious. Another pause. Then, softer. I am curious. And that was it. Not attraction. Not yet. Something better. Something slower. Something that doesn't rush. The moment she stopped trying to win and started trying to understand, I gave a small, almost amused smile. That's how it starts. What does? I looked at her, not challenging, not pushing. Just steady. Bad decisions. She didn't laugh immediately. Didn't deflect. Just stayed there, close enough now that the rest of the bar felt distant. Then, quietly, maybe I don't mind those. That was new, and she knew it, which made it even more interesting. Because people like Ginny don't fall quickly. They shift slowly, almost unwillingly. And by the time they notice it, it's already happening. Curiosity is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention. It lingers. And once it settles in, it changes the way people look at things, especially people who are used to already knowing the outcome. Ginny was one of those people. At some point, without either of us marking it, the balance had shifted. Not dramatically. Not in a way you could point at and say, there, that's when it happened. But it was there. Before, she had been scanning the room even while talking to me. Small glances, subtle checks, keeping options open. Now she wasn't. Her world had narrowed. Just slightly. But enough. You're still here, I said casually, glancing at her empty glass. You sound surprised. I am. You don't seem like someone who stays longer than necessary. She turned the glass slowly between her fingers. Maybe I changed my mind. That happens. Not often. That part wasn't said with arrogance. Just fact. And that's what made it more interesting. A new drink arrived. Hers more complex, mine still aggressively simple. She didn't comment on it this time. Didn't try to control that detail. Another small shift. You're different with me, she said after a moment. Compared to everyone else. That's because I don't know everyone else. A faint smile. No, she said, studying me. You just don't treat me like they do. I leaned back slightly, letting the moment breathe. And how do they treat you? She hesitated. Not long, but long enough to matter. Predictably. That sound boring. It is. Silence settled again, but now it wasn't empty. It had weight. The kind that builds when two people stop performing and start adjusting. She wasn't leading the interaction anymore. Not fully. And she knew it. You could see in the way she watched more carefully now, not scanning, but observing. Not calculating outcomes, but trying to understand them. That's a dangerous position for someone who's used to control. So what's your angle? She asked suddenly. Angle? Everyone has one. And you? Always. I figured. She leaned in just a bit more. Closer than before. So what's yours? I took a moment before answering. Not to be dramatic, but because silence had become part of the conversation now. I don't have one tonight. She narrowed her eyes slightly. I don't believe that. You don't have to. Then why are you here? I shrugged. Same reason you are. Which is something better than what I had before I walked in. That landed differently. Not as a move. Not as a line. Just honest enough to disrupt her expectations again. She leaned back this time. Exhaled slowly. And for the first time since she walked in, she didn't have an immediate response. That was new. And she noticed it. That's annoying, she muttered. What is? You. Common feedback. She smiled, but softer now. Less sharp edges. No, she said. You don't react the way you're supposed to. According to who? According to patterns. Patterns are efficient. And predictable. Exactly. That earned a quiet laugh. Not controlled. Not placed. Just real. Another shift. The space between us felt smaller now. Not physically, though that too, but mentally. The distance she usually kept, the buffer that allowed her to stay above the interaction. It was thinning. You know what's weird? She said after a while. Many things. Be specific. She ignored that. I'm not bored. I glanced at her. That is weird. I'm serious. I can tell. She traced the rim of her glass absent-mindedly. Not a calculated gesture this time. Just something to do with her hands. I usually know where things are going, she continued. With people. And now. She met my eyes again. Held them. Now I don't. That was it. The first real loss. Not obvious. Not dramatic. But important. Because for someone like Jenny, uncertainty isn't comfortable. It's unfamiliar. And unfamiliar things tend to pull you in deeper before you realize what they're doing. Does that bother you? I asked. She thought about it. Actually thought. A little. Enough to leave. A small pause. Then, no. Simple. Clear. Honest. And that honesty cost her more than she realized. Time moved differently after that. Slower. Heavier. The bar faded further into the background. Voices blending into a low, indistinct hum. The world outside the small space between us stopped mattering in any immediate way. She wasn't looking for exits anymore. She was staying. Choosing to stay. That's when curiosity turns into something else. Not attraction yet. Not quite. But closer. More personal. You're dangerous, she said quietly. That's dramatic. No. She shook her head slightly. You make people drop their guard without noticing. I smiled faintly. You haven't dropped yours. She held my gaze. And for a moment, just a moment, there was no answer. Which was the answer? She looked away first. Not fully. Just enough. Not completely, she said. Another small crack. Deeper this time. The kind that doesn't close easily. And she felt it. You could tell. Because instead of pulling back, she leaned in again. Closer than before. Not a move. Not a tactic. Just instinct. This is new, she said under her breath. That's what you said earlier. I meant it more this time. I watched her for a second. Then nodded slightly. Good. Good. Yeah. What? I took a sip, then looked back at her. Because now it matters. Silence. Real silence. The kind that doesn't need filling. She didn't laugh. Didn't deflect. Didn't shift the subject. She just stayed there. Thinking. Feeling something she wasn't used to feeling in a place like this. And that's when it became clear. Jenny wasn't playing the same game anymore. She hadn't stopped playing. But the rules had changed. And she hadn't noticed when. There's a moment, subtle, almost invisible, when tension stops being theoretical. When it stops living in pauses, in glances, in unfinished sentences, and starts existing in space. Physical space. The distance between two people becomes something you can almost measure, not in centimeters, but in decisions. By now, that distance between me and Jenny had changed. Not all at once. Gradually. Unavoidably. The bar hadn't gotten quieter, but it felt like it had. Conversations around us blurred into a low, meaningless hum. Glasses clinked somewhere far away. Someone laughed too loudly at something that wasn't that funny. None of it mattered, because her attention hadn't moved in a long time. And neither had mine. She was closer now. Not dramatically, but enough that it wasn't accidental anymore. Her body angled toward mine without hesitation. Her movements had lost that earlier precision, that careful efficiency. There was still control, but it wasn't the same kind. It wasn't about managing the situation anymore. It was about staying in it. You're quiet, she said softly. I'm thinking. About. I glanced at her briefly. Whether this is where things get complicated. A small smile appeared on her lips. Not sharp. Not strategic. Something in between. You say that like it hasn't already. She wasn't wrong. But saying it out loud changed something. Because now it wasn't just happening. Now it was acknowledged. That matters. A lot. She shifted slightly, her arm brushing the edge of mine. Not quite contact, not quite distance. Testing, but slower than before. Less calculated. You still haven't answered something, she continued. That sounds like an accusation. It is. I exhaled lightly. Go on. Why aren't you trying? That question hung there. Simple. Direct. But layered. I turned my glass slowly before answering. Trying what? She gave me a look. You know exactly what. I did. But making her say it would have pushed too far. And this wasn't about pushing anymore. It was about letting things unfold just enough. Because I don't need to, I said calmly. A pause. Then, that's a terrible answer. It's an honest one. She studied me again, but differently now. Less like she was analyzing a problem. More like she was feeling her way through something unfamiliar. Most people would have made a move by now, she said. Most people follow timing, I replied. I follow moments. Her eyes didn't leave mine. And this isn't one. I let the silence stretch. Not as a tactic, just long enough to let the weight of the question settle between us. It might be, I said quietly. That changed the air. Not dramatically, but enough. Because now the possibility wasn't abstract anymore. It was real. Close. She didn't move away. That was the important part. If anything, she leaned in just a fraction more. Close enough that the line between casual and intentional had disappeared completely. You're making this slower on purpose, she said. Maybe. Why? I looked at her. Really looked this time. At the way her expression had softened without her noticing. At how her confidence was still there, but no longer acting as a shield. Because fast things don't last, I said. Another pause. Deeper this time. She didn't respond immediately. Didn't joke. Didn't deflect. She just stayed, and that silence said more than anything she could have added. Her hand moved slightly on the bar, closer to mine. Not touching, but no longer avoiding it. This is new, she said again, quieter now. You said that. I know. She allowed a small breath. I just didn't expect it to feel like this. That was it. The shift. Clear now. Before, she had been curious. Now, she was involved. There's a difference. Curiosity observes. Involvement risks. And Ginny wasn't someone who risked easily, which made this moment heavier than it looked. I didn't move closer. Didn't break the space. Because now it wasn't about closing distance. It was about letting her choose to. And she felt that. That's the part people underestimate. When you stop pushing, people move on their own. Slowly, carefully, but willingly. Say something, she murmured. About what? Anything. I smiled slightly. That's not how this works. What does that mean? It means, I said, you're not used to not knowing what happens next. She held my gaze. Didn't argue. Didn't deny it. No, she admitted quietly. The honesty was different now. Less guarded. More real. And you don't like it, I added. She hesitated. Then, I don't hate it either. That mattered. More than anything she'd said before. Because that's how it starts. Not with certainty. Not with a clear decision. But with that exact feeling. I don't hate this. It's small. But it opens the door to everything else. The space between us was almost gone now. Not physically forced. Just no longer maintained. Her voice dropped slightly when she spoke again. So what happens now? I looked at her for a second. Then at the space between us. Then back. Now, I said quietly, you stop thinking about it. A faint smile. And do what? I didn't answer immediately. Didn't rush it. Because this part, this exact moment, only happens once. And rushing it ruins it. Whatever you were about to do anyway, I said. Silence. Not empty. Not awkward. Full. Heavy. Real. She didn't look away. Didn't pull back. Didn't break it. And that was the answer. Not spoken. But clear. The tension didn't explode. It didn't need to. It settled. Right there between us. Stable. Undeniable. Waiting. There's a point where tension stops building. Not because it disappears, but because it has nowhere else to go. It just stays. Full. Heavy. Present in every small movement, every pause that lasts half a second too long, every glance that doesn't break when it normally should. That's where we were. Right on that edge. The bar still existed, technically. People were talking, glasses still touched the counter, music still played, but it all felt distant now. Like it belonged to another layer of reality that didn't quite reach us anymore. Jenny hadn't moved away. That was the first thing that mattered. Because earlier, she could have. Easily. Effortlessly. She had done it 1,000 times before with other people, other nights, other almost moments that never quite got this far. But not this time. Now she stayed. And staying is a decision. Even when it looks like nothing. Her hand rested on the bar, closer to mine than before. Not touching, but no longer pretending distance was important. Her posture had lost its earlier structure. There was still confidence, still control somewhere underneath. But it wasn't leading anymore. Something else was. You're still thinking, she said quietly. A little. About what? I looked at her. There was no point in pretending now. About whether you're going to overthink this in 5 seconds. A faint smile appeared. I might. Yeah. But not yet. That mattered. Not yet. That's all moments like this need. Not certainty, just permission to exist. She shifted slightly closer again, this time not even pretending it was accidental. The space between us was almost gone now. Close enough to notice the small details. The way her breathing had slowed, the way her eyes didn't move as much anymore, the way her usual sharpness had softened into something quieter. More real. You're very calm, she said. I'm paying attention. To what? To the fact that you haven't left. She let out a small breath, almost a laugh, but softer. I noticed that too. Silence again, but different now. Not waiting, not testing, just there. And then something shifted, not in words, in movement. Her hand moved first, not dramatically, not like a decision you could replay and pinpoint, just a small adjustment. And suddenly, the space between our hands didn't exist anymore. Contact, light, barely there, but real. She didn't pull back. That was the second thing that mattered, because contact breaks the last illusion that this is still just conversation, still just curiosity, still something you can step out of cleanly. You can't. Not after that. I didn't react immediately. Didn't grab her hand. Didn't turn it into something bigger. Just let it exist. Because rushing that moment would have turned it back into a move. And it wasn't a move anymore. It was a choice. Her fingers shifted slightly against mine. Not nervous. Not hesitant. Just aware. This is a bad idea, she said quietly. Probably. You're not helping. I'm not supposed to. A small smile again. But there was something else behind it now. Something less controlled. You're very comfortable with this, she said. With what? With not rushing. I looked at her hand, then back at her. If it's real, it doesn't need help. That landed. Deep. She didn't answer right away. Didn't joke. Didn't deflect. She just stayed there, her hand still lightly against mine, her eyes holding mine in a way that wasn't testing anymore. It was searching, and maybe, just maybe, finding something she didn't expect. You're dangerous, she said again, softer this time. You said that. I meant it differently now. I tilted my head slightly. How so? She hesitated. Not because she didn't know, but because she did. You don't make things complicated, she said. You make them real. That was new. For her. For this place. For this kind of interaction. And you could feel it. Because once something becomes real, you can't treat it like a game anymore. Her hand didn't move away. If anything, it settled more naturally against mine, like the hesitation had finally faded. And then, she leaned in. Not fast. Not impulsively. Slow enough that she could have stopped at any moment. But she didn't. That was the third thing that mattered. I didn't close the distance for her. Didn't meet her halfway. Just stayed there, letting her decide how far this went. Because now, it had to be her choice. Completely. Her face was closer now. Close enough that the rest of the world blurred completely into nothing. Close enough that even silence felt loud. She paused there, just for a second. One last moment where she could have turned it into a joke, pulled back, reset everything. Gone back to control. Gone back to safe. She didn't. You're really not going to stop me, are you? She whispered. I shook my head slightly. No. A breath. Soft. Almost unsteady. Then, she closed the distance. The kiss wasn't rushed. That's what made it different. Not impulsive. Not careless. Slow. Deliberate. Like she was testing something at first, then realizing halfway through that she didn't want to stop. Her hand shifted slightly, no longer just resting, but holding, lightly but with intention. And in that moment, everything she had been when she walked into that bar, calculated, distant, controlled, faded. Not completely, but enough. Enough to feel the difference. Enough to make it real. When she pulled back, it wasn't abrupt. Just enough distance to look at me again. Her expression had changed. Still her. Still Jenny. But softer. Less guarded. And definitely not in control the way she had been before. Okay, she murmured. A small, almost disbelieving smile followed. That wasn't supposed to happen. I exhaled quietly. It usually doesn't. She looked at me for a second longer, then shook her head slightly. No, she said. This definitely doesn't. And for once, she wasn't analyzing it. She wasn't calculating value. She wasn't thinking about what came next in terms of advantage or return. She was just there, in it. And that was the biggest shift of all, because Ginny didn't just lose control of the moment. She chose to. Moments are easy to dismiss. You can call them mistakes. Blame the lighting, the mood, the alcohol, the timing. You can shrink them down into something temporary, something that doesn't follow you once you leave the room. That's what most people do. That's how they stay in control. But some moments don't cooperate like that. They don't stay contained. They stretch. They follow. They change the way silence feels after they happen. That kiss should have been one of those things you laugh off 5 minutes later. That was fun anyway kind of moment, but it wasn't. And we both knew it before either of us said anything. Ginny didn't pull away like someone resetting the situation. She stayed close. Not as close as before, but closer than necessary, which is always the tell. Her hand was still near mine. Not holding anymore, but not gone either. Like she hadn't fully decided what to do with it yet. That hesitation? That was new. She looked at me, and for the first time since she walked into the bar, there was no calculation in it. No quick evaluation. No silent math. Just presence. So, she said quietly, then stopped. That alone was enough to shift everything. Ginny didn't stop mid-sentence. People like her don't lose words. They choose them, carefully. But now, there was a gap, and she felt it. That was, she tried again. I tilted my head slightly. Unexpected, a faint smile. Annoyingly accurate. It's a skill. She exhaled softly, shaking her head just a little. But she didn't move away. Didn't create distance. Didn't reset. Instead, she leaned back just enough to look at me more clearly, like she was trying to figure out something that didn't fit into her usual patterns. "You're not what I thought," she said. "That's disappointing." "No," she replied. "It's inconvenient." That word mattered. Inconvenient means something doesn't fit, doesn't behave, doesn't stay where it's supposed to. And that's exactly what this had become. Something that didn't follow her rules anymore. Silence settled again, but now it wasn't tension. It was processing. She glanced at her drink, then back at me. "This is usually the part where I leave," she admitted. "Usually?" "Yeah." And a small pause. Not long, but honest. "I don't feel like it." There it was. Not dramatic. Not exaggerated. Just simple and real. I nodded slightly. "Then don't." No pressure. No pull. That mattered more than anything else. Because for the first time that night, the choice wasn't influenced. It wasn't part of the game. It was hers. Completely. She studied me again. But this time, there was no attempt to figure out how to win. No attempt to regain control. Just curiosity, quieter now, deeper. "You know what's weird?" she said. "Many things. You'll have to narrow it down." She ignored that, but smiled slightly. "I don't feel like I'm talking to someone I just met. That could be a bad sign." "Why?" "Because it means something skipped steps." She held my gaze. Or maybe it didn't need them. That landed differently. Because now she wasn't reacting. She was contributing. That's when you know something has shifted for real. Time moved again, but differently now. Not stretched, not tense. Just steady. The kind of time that doesn't rush you, but doesn't hold you back either. The bar slowly came back into focus around us. Not because anything changed, but because we weren't locked inside that moment anymore. We had moved past it. And somehow, that made it more real, not less. She finished her drink, but didn't signal for another one right away. Another small change. Before, everything had rhythm, control, intent. Now, she was just there, letting things happen. "So what now?" she asked eventually. Not sharply, not strategically, just asking. I looked at her for a second, then shrugged slightly. "Now we see if this was just a moment." She tilted her head. And if it wasn't, I met her gaze. Then it becomes something else. A small silence followed, but this one felt lighter, open. She smiled again, but softer than before. Less polished, more hers. "You really don't chase, do you?" she said. "No." "Why not?" "Because the right things don't need it." She let that sit. Didn't argue. Didn't challenge. Just accepted it in a way that would have been impossible an hour earlier. Then she leaned in slightly again. Not as close as before, not intense. Just enough. "That's very inconvenient for me," she said quietly. "You said that already." "I'm in it more now." I smiled. "Good. Good. Yeah." She shook her head softly, almost laughing under her breath. "You're a problem." You're still here. I know. Another pause. Then, I think I want to be. That was it. Not a grand confession. Not a dramatic shift. Just a decision. Simple. Clear. Real. And that mattered more than anything else. Because Ginny didn't fall fast. She didn't get swept up. She didn't lose herself in moments. But she did something rarer. She chose to stay after one. And sometimes, that's how it starts. Not with fireworks. Not with certainty. But with one quiet, unexpected decision. I'm not leaving.